Well, hello there. My name is Jay with CompuMatter and with ServerMatter. And the purpose of this video is to teach you how to set up a self-signed certificate so that you can work on your websites, whatever your website content is, and display it in a local browser with absolutely total transparency, just like you were looking at a live server with Let's Encrypt installed. I got to tell you, I have been learning personally for the last week, and there is so much misinformation. There are so many, maybe you can do this, maybe you can do that, or do it this way or do it that way, and I've chased my tail endlessly for countless hours. I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many hours. I've enlisted the aid of multiple freelancers at different points in time, and I finally got one that knew exactly what he was doing last night, and that's allowed me to succeed, put in the final pieces of the puzzle, and share this video with you. So I'm using, I should say this in advance, a Linux server, an Nginx web server, and a Windows computer. Now, most of this information is going to apply no matter what you're using, but the exact commands are specific to these particular platforms. So let's get started. I'll start by making that screen a little bit smaller. I thought it'd be an appropriate background given the nature of this. Okay, I'm starting off in a directory of my choosing. You can do the same thing. Create a directory. I want you to put these two bash files in there. I'm going to give you these two bash files. They'll be in the comments section. One is called generate root cert. The other one is called generate client cert. Let me go ahead into the first one, because that's the first one you're going to generate. You will supply it a name. It can be any name you want it to be. It's going to represent the name of the server that you're creating the cert on. And in my case, I am going to use a domain name because there's an uncommonness there, but it has nothing to do with websites. It's just a root cert and some friendly name that you should use to represent your server environment. I recommend you don't put spaces in there. That's only going to complicate things. All right, so let's go ahead down here. This particular bash file is very well documented, so you'll be able to look at that as you move along. We're going to remove any existing root certs. We are going to, I'm going to replace any periods that you supply with a dash. My experience in life tells me that periods are potential trouble spots, so we're going to avoid them. And then we are going to generate first the creation of a key file, the root CA key. It could have been named anything. This is just an arbitrary name that we've created. And then behind that, we're going to create the root cert CA PIM file. Now that PIM file is it dependent? Yeah, it's dependent upon the key file, just so you understand the relationship that was previously created. That's why it's created first. So there it is right there. There's that dependency fulfilled. That's the input. This is valid for 3,650 days, so that is 10 years. I wasn't sure if you could only make them for 1 year or whatever, and I'd have to be doing this every year. 10 years, no problem. You probably won't have to think about it in your current occupation for the lifetime of the server. And at that point, it's going to generate this file and put it in that initial root directory that I'm creating this from. So again, you can change these to any. In fact, I probably should have inserted that as a single beginning that said a single variable that said cert path or something like that. So you'll probably have to edit that if I haven't got to it by then. All right. Next thing we're going to go do is test the validity of that new certificate that we just created. Just going to bring it in, run a test on it, spit it out. It should look like a certificate when it's done, and I'll give you an example of that as we proceed. The next thing we're going to do is copy what was just created to the folder name user local share CA certificates required. And it gives you confirmation along the way that that copy has taken place. That way if there's an error for whatever reason, it'll pop up and you'll see it. And then it's going to copy the same certificate to the etc. SSL certs folder required. Finally, it's going to run the update CA certificates with the flags fresh and verbose so that you can see what's going on. That's the verbose. The fresh really ensures that it's not a cursory update. It really goes in, digs in, and recreates all the certificates from scratch and doesn't miss anything. The grep root CA is beneficial because when you update CA certificates, it's going to go through every certificate on your server. You may have 40 of them, 50 of them. You don't want to look at all of those. You only want to look at those that are related to the CA that you're creating, which is the root CA cert PEM. So with those in there, Ubuntu, in this case, updates the certificates and kind of folds it into itself as something that's recognized from this point forward. Okay, and then we echo to the screen some of the things that you need to do after you have created the cert. And it steps through these. First, you're going to delete any matching certificate from your Windows Cert Manager MSC. We're going to go through Cert Manager MSC in just a little bit here, and you'll see how you might do that, how you're going to add it, and how you can delete it. You're going to copy the contents of this file. That's the actual encryption key. You're going to copy that to your clipboard, and then you're going to paste them in a file in Windows. And again, if you're using Apple, it's going to be something similar, but this applies to the Windows environment. And then you're going to import, you're going to paste those contents into a file of your choosing, and you're going to import that file from a command prompt. So log into a command prompt as administrator. You're going to type certutil add store root and the name of the file that you had previously created. And when it's done, after echoing that to the screen, excuse me, in fact, I'm going to flip that. It's going to restart your Nginx server just in case this was the last thing that needed to be done, and you're ready to test your website. Now, it could be that you need to create the client server because you haven't created it yet, and restarting Nginx server will not have any ill effects if that's the case. Let's just touch base on the generate client cert, and we're going to run these so you can see how they work. Okay, back to the client. At the beginning, we start off by requiring that you supply a website domain name. Excuse me. I need a glass of water. I'll have to settle for a bit of coffee. So it's letting you know if you forget to append that to back you up and tell you to supply it. Here we do need, it is domain name specific. So there is, first of all, there is a wildcard certificate for the client, which we're going to create here, but it's only for within that one domain name. So, yourdomain.com or anything before yourdomain.com, any subdomains. And I'm told that there is the possibility of using a wildcard certificate for all domains, but I'm also told that it will slow down the process. It will slow down your websites. Now, I haven't tried that yet, so from my vantage point right now, this video is just about getting a self-signed certificate for any domain that you want to use, for as many domains as you want to use, but you'll be doing them one at a time. Okay, but this bash script makes it so quick, that won't be a problem anymore. Okay, the certs directory, which I have done in this particular file, and then we remove any files that we've created from a previous exercise using this very same domain name so things don't get mucked up. And we give you confirmation that they're being removed. We then generate the key file for this domain name and we put it in a directory. You see this certs directory and it follows the one here. I'm just going to let you have a look at that. That means we're going to create a directory by the name of your domain that you just supplied, and we're going to put everything inside of that. I'll give you a look at that. So you can see the files that we want to use are in there. Okay, that way you've got multiple domains that you used over time. It separates them all in their nice individual folders. Okay, we're going to start by generating the key file. Then we're going to generate a CSR file based on the above key. So that's a dependency. And here you'll fill in the information that's specific to you. This is a subject line, country, state, location, organization, and organizational unit, which I'm just calling web dev. And then CN. The CN is going to be the domain name in this case, and that's what you're going to see appearing as your certificate in the Windows environment. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then as we move down, we have the echoing of a PEM file, and we do comment that. We talk about it up here. It starts off with creating a temporary use file, this v3ext. It's created. This information is fed into it, and that's picked up at the bottom, as you see, external file. That's picked up here and fed into this command. So it's all part of this command, and we are going to take in the CSR file that we've generated above, and combined with the root cert that we've generated earlier, and the root key, listen to me, the root key file that we've generated earlier, and we are going to create, which you get the CA create serial out, the CRT file. And we've got that one good for 300. The domain version is only good for 365 days. I'll have to research that and see if that can also be made to be the 10 years. I don't see why it would not, but I'm only going to be developing over a period of a month or so, but that may come into play. And then at the end I restart Nginx again. Now I am going to put a little read line in here for the echo that gives us an opportunity to see that these files have been deleted. I want you to know that this is in fact a fresh effort. And the same thing here. I'm going to go right after these removals. And actually, that should be above it. So you'll be able to see. And we're going to open another tab. Oh, we've already got another tab open. And right now you can see this, the root certs are in fact there, and the same thing on the individual domain. Now this also goes out and deletes the root certificate where it appears elsewhere on these servers. So we've let's see if I can show you that. So when it is generated, it creates files on your system, and you see those right here. So it's not just removing the files that are in the current directory, but it's removing those that were generated within the system itself and replacing those with new ones. So let's start this process off. Root, common name of server must be supplied. Okay, so again, I could use anything here. I am going to use a specific domain though, because that represents this particular server. And it's saying it's going to it's letting me know that if you regenerate a root certificate, your websites are going to stop working on this server, at least in the SSH verification aspect of it, until you replace the cert in your client machine, which we're going to get into. But if you had already known that, you could press Control-C to quit, which I need to replace with quit. Okay, Control-C to quit, or Enter to continue. We're going to continue. And now it says removing any existing root by the same name. So let's just take a look at that. And you'll notice that the root CAs that you saw above here are now gone. This right here is an example of the testing the validity, and that is what it should look like. That's the type of reply that you should get to that statement. And it has done everything it needs to do, and it gives us our things to do, which we're going to cover in just a minute. Okay, and now we are going to run the generate client, and just like before, it requires you must supply the website domain name, in this case, that this certificate is for. So we're going to run the same thing, and we're going to call it smvirtual.biz. But before we do, I want to show you a couple of things. And actually, let me run that to the point where it tells me that they are deleted. Okay, SM virtual. Okay, you can see that is now an empty directory. All right, continuing on with the script. And everything's okay. Let's take a look. And there's the files that we expected to see. This file can be deleted. It's totally unnecessary and just a temporary file. All right, so I want to bring over, this is Google Chrome. If we refresh that screen, we see we're told that the error certificate authority invalid, which was what I expect to see at this point because we have not put the root certificate in place. Same thing, this is Firefox. This is Firefox Developer Edition. And they give a different name for the same problem, secure error bad signature. Can't get in. And lastly, we'll look at Edge. And we get a redirect, same type of an error as Chrome. So let's close those for the moment. It's obviously the same problem I've had right along, the same problem that you probably had and why you're here looking at this. So now let us grab that root ca cert and look at its contents with the cat command. And we're just going to go down and copy everything from within the begin and the end sign. Okay, that both of those lines are important. If they're not there, this process will fail. And we are going to now open up, we'll close this one for now, get rid of that file. And we're just going to create a new file and we are going to call it whatever. Okay, and the ending, however, we do want to be CRT, and that's inherently recognized as a certificate file in most operating systems. We're going to right click on that, open with Notepad, and paste the contents of that cert in there. And just back up one because we don't want any blank lines. You want to be just after the last dash in this file. We're going to save it. I'll minimize that, minimize this, and we'll come back to a DOS prompt now. Now you want to open a command prompt as administrator. You should be familiar with that, but if you're not, CMD, right click, run as administrator, and that gets you here. And then we're going to use the certutil command, certutil space dash add store space root, and the file name. And as you can see, it can be any file at all. We're going to hit enter. And if you've done everything you're supposed to do up till now, that's what you're going to get. Signature matches public key, and that's a command completed successfully. Move that out of the way. And at this point, I think we've done everything we need to do to retry our browser environment. Okay, so now I'm going to close Chrome and reopen it. And that's all there is to it. So you do have to look out for cache. I didn't have to clear cache or anything like that, but I did have to close the browser and reopen it. Let's do the same with Firefox. Oh, there is a unique twist to Firefox, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, Firefox is working, but I have had circumstances, and perhaps my code was off and now it's fixed. I'm not sure, but I have had circumstances, and I have actually had one of my developers tell me specifically that Firefox will fail. Obviously, it's doing fine now, but if it does and the other ones are working normally, click on Settings, type in cert, view your certificates, choose the Authorities tab, choose Import, and navigate to the file that you created earlier, the certificate file which you imported into the Cert Manager. That very same file, you're just going to open and choose yes to both of those. Check Trust, OK, OK, and that builds in the certificate into the browser. So if it's not paying attention to the root server certificate for any reason, we know it will at least pay attention to itself. It'll load that cert when the boot when the browser first boots up and recognize it and provide no errors. Now, you may have seen the PHP errors that I had on the screen earlier. That's another issue associated with the secure cert problem that we've now gotten past. Let me give you an example of that. Right here in my code, you see we do a file get contents, and we also do a curl get contents under slightly different circumstances. These commands were failing when running it without loading the secure certificate in the way that it needs to be. So there are real ramifications. Now, you could load your site as a non-HTTPS, as a regular insecure site. But then, if you've done what I've done, you've created a site, it's got links in it, the links were linked to the HTTP, you've got to change every one of them. Ideally, you don't have to do that. You do this, and you end up with a testing environment that's just as perfect as your live environment. So as I say, that's been about a week worth of brain damage for me, culminating in the creation of this video, which is for my future as well as yours. This is something that I'll refer to in the future when I run into the same problem. And those bash scripts, they're in the video, so if for any reason they blow away or blow up, they'll be there too as long as YouTube is still alive. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.